Thank you for joining me today on Coffee With. We are back at the Duff Green with the owner. I should say the Duff Green Mansion and bed and breakfast. And you do a lot of things here. Wedding receptions, all kinds of events. Harley Caldwell, the owner, and this is your home.
This is my home. I live here.
So now we're in the ladies' parlor.
Exactly.
It is very red.
It's very red. It was red when I got here, and I don't know if I would prefer a paler color, but I get a lot of compliments on the red.
It's memorable.
I think it's Alicia Sharp red.
Just like that was
Harry Sharp blue.
So tell us about the ladies' parlor, Harley.
Okay. Well, you know, we've been watching, we've been doing our tour of the home that we do every morning for our guests. And we started in the gentleman's parlor. We pretend that it's about 1856 or 1857. Duff and Mary are living in the house, and they've invited us to dinner. And so we've been through the gentleman's parlor and the dining room. We've pretended that we've had dinner at the table. The food has come up with the dumbwaiter from the Dixie room, which was the kitchen in the original house. And now the gentlemen are escorting the ladies back over here to the ladies' parlor. We're going to tell you that Duff was a very practical fellow. In the next two segments, you're going to find out just how practical Duff was, what a smart guy he was. He did something impractical when he built his house. He built a ballroom. We laugh and we say every family should have a ballroom. Duff built a ballroom, but then he was just too practical. He couldn't just leave this space vacant as if it was a ballroom all the time. He used this part as Mary's ladies' parlor. He used this part over here as a Victorian game room. Charades were very popular, card games. Of course, there was no electricity, there was no internet. We all had to enjoy each other and play some games together. So he used that as their game room. But they had lots of balls. Duff and Mary had a lot of balls. The ball would be about a 3-day event. People would come up from Natchez, down from the Mississippi Delta. Everybody in Vicksburg would be here. It would be an exciting event. Or Duff and Mary might have had a dance tonight after dinner, just for the 12 of us who had dinner tonight. If they did, Duff would have this whole area cleared of furniture. There'd be no furniture in here. And he would have string instrumentalists set up over in that corner, people who made their living going from place to place playing for events, just like rock bands go from place to place today playing for events. In the next corner would be a table, sort of like what's there, would be set up with a beverage bowl on it, something like our punch bowl, and the gentlemen would gather around that beverage bowl. Then we ladies would be seated all the way over here in these little period chairs, these little chairs here. So we would look a lot like cupcakes perched on the side of those chairs. You could watch a video, you can watch a YouTube video of how to sit down in an antebellum dress if you're interested. I can't teach you how to do it, but you can do it. Robin has it. Robin, you have an antebellum dress.
I do.
You should have worn
You
that.
keep trying to get me to come and give tours, but I can't. You know what? I can't find a hoop skirt, painted, whatever you call that thing.
Well, you'll make one.
My hoop is gone.
Your hoop is gone.
So it's just a straight.
You'll make one. I have great confidence in your ability to figure that out. Anyway, a fella's at our dance, our dinner dance, and he wants to ask a girl to dance. He's got to start all the way over in that corner, and he's got to come all the way over here. So that's kind of intimidating. What if she says no? What if she won't dance with him? Not only did 11 people just watch him come across the room, 11 people have to watch him go back across the room. He comes with the assurance that she cannot refuse him. To refuse him would be rude, not only to him, but to Mr. and Mrs. Green, because they have not invited anyone into their ballroom who is not a gentleman. So it doesn't matter what he looks like, doesn't matter what he smells like. She's got to dance with him. Maybe she's cute, she's young, she's the belle of the Southern Ball. Everybody wants to dance with her. She can only dance with one person at a time. So she can say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm otherwise occupied. But he's got another ace. He can ask to see her dance card that has been engraved for the evening with her name and the date, all the different dances. We do not have a dance card in our possession, but Cedar Grove does. Cedar Grove has one used at Cedar Grove during this period of time. I just saw it's framed in their ballroom. Just saw it the other day. Anyway, He's gonna pencil himself in for the next available dance. He's gonna come back, they're gonna dance a reel or a waltz through these two rooms. The columns are not original to the house. They were added in the 1980s renovation to cover conduit that's going upstairs. So they're gonna dance a reel or a waltz. He's gonna bring her back to the ladies. She doesn't have to dance every dance with him, but she's gonna dance one dance with him because we are not rude in Warren County, Mississippi. We're not rude. But maybe tonight is not a dance. Tonight is just a dinner party. And then, so you gentlemen are gonna get us ladies seated here in the ladies' parlor, and then you're headed right back to the gentleman's parlor, right where you wanted to go all along to smoke cigars, drink bourbon. And Mrs. Green is gonna serve us some after dinner refreshments over here. We say she would serve us some tea, but the truth is, this is the South, we might have wanted something with a little more punch to it than the tea. But if she did serve us tea, it would be a difficult task because we talked in the last episode about how short the people were. The average Confederate soldier was only 5 feet 7 inches tall, weighed 141 pounds. Mrs. Green is shorter than the average Confederate soldier. She's not very tall. And the tea table is tall, and the silver service is heavy once you get the tea in it. So it's a difficult task to serve the tea. That doesn't bother Mrs. Green. Robin, you have any thoughts on why that might not bother Mrs. Green, that it's difficult to serve the tea?
She had somebody else do it for her.
Exactly, bingo. She doesn't serve a bit of that tea. She has a servant to do it for her. And today we know, of course, what the name of that servitude was. It was American slavery. So when the opportunity came to me to acquire the Duff Green 5 years ago, I wanted it. I wanted it as much as I hope I will ever want anything, any material thing in my whole life. I wanted the Duff Green. But I wasn't sure that ideologically I could own the Duff Green mansion, because the Duff Green is a monument to cotton, and a monument to cotton is a monument to slavery. But I did a lot of research, and I decided I would acquire the Duff Green, and that I would invite you all to come here today, and I would tell you Duff and Mary's story in the context of the time in which they lived. Yes, they owned at least 20 slaves. 20 was the cutoff mark for being conscripted into the Confederacy, and Duff did not serve in the Confederate Army. So we know they owned at least 20 slaves. The war's been called a rich man's war and a poor man's battle, because those fellows fighting out there in those trenches didn't have the cotton economy to protect that Duff and the planters had. So we know they owned at least 20 slaves, but at the same time that they owned slaves, the gentleman who came to build the house was a free man of color, and he brought his slaves with him. He owned slaves. The famous American Indian chief Greenwood LaFleur from up in the Mississippi Delta owned numerous African slaves, and the Catholic Church in the United States owned slaves. When the Jesuit priest at Georgetown University finally became enlightened enough to realize that they couldn't own slaves, they weren't enlightened enough to free their slaves. They sold their slaves. They brought them here to Mississippi, and they sold their slaves. That was the context of the time in which Duff and Mary lived. They were not equal people. And we also point out to you that yes, that romantic old South lifestyle that you've read about, it existed right here. We can document that Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, danced many times in the ballroom. We point out to you it didn't last very long. You'll hear at McRaven, this house was built in the 1700s. But when you get into McRaven, the kitchen was built in the 1700s, and then the house grew up around it. They tout that they are the house of 3 periods. Most of the antebellum structures in Natchez were built in the 20s or the 30s, and Vicksburg followed suit. So it was, if in the oldest of families, though, that romantic old South lifestyle, the opulence of houses like the Duff Green Mansion, only lasted for 30 years. For Duff and Mary, it only lasted for 7 years. They were only in this house for 7 years when the war came to Vicksburg. So in the 2 parlors, we talk about all the grandiosity, the opulence, the parties, the balls, the dances, and then we go into the game room, we meet the gentlemen in the portraits in there, and we talk about the rest of the story.
Thank you, Harley.
Thank you, Robin.